Moscow. He's a Rosh Polo in Moscow. He flies there like once a month, but he gives shiur every day to Moscow. It's so random.
It is random.
It's very random, huh? Rosh Polo in Moscow.
Too far.
It's as if he's in Moscow.
Yeah. That was in the beginning of like this live feed on the Skype and thing.
I want to tip it over.
You can
Is there more light?
pull out more wire.
Oh yeah, get
I'm supposed to be in that. I'm supposed to. Oh. Oh, okay.
All right.
Scoot down.
Sorry?
Scoot down.
He's fixing his beard.
And I do this all day anyways.
I know, me too. It's tough.
Okay, so we got a little bogged down last time, and didn't really get a chance to see all the wonderful position in the mind. Okay. So let's go to just to recap. So the first simon here is, we talked about Hilchos Talmud Torah. We got a little stuck in that, right? So the takeaway message was halachot psukot b'tameh. Is that what you need to know, according to the Shulchan Aruch Alter Rebbe, is what the Shulchan Aruch says, but not the way he says it. You have to learn it the way, in a similar manner to how the Alter Rebbe learned it, or how he wrote it down, that he explains each halacha how he gets to the psak in the end, what the different considerations are. And in the end, you're given a synopsis, a short synopsis of the whole Mailach of the Gemara and the Rishonim. It's basically, so really, I think somebody even said it, you need to learn in a way that it's like the Beis Yosef with the Shulchan Aruch together, which is why a lot of people learn that way. They learn Beis Yosef and then they learn the halacha. And now, the next point is to understand why it starts with an Eved Ivri. What's the whole idea of starting with an Eved Ivri? If these are the first halachos Moshe Rabbeinu was learning after Matan Torah, they should be something that is essential to being a Yid. And yet it seems that it starts with halachos that are so distant and so esoteric that why would there be a connection to every Jew who it's very rare to become an Eved Ivri. Is it maybe even more rare to own one? And in any case, it's not noheg all the time. It's not noheg when there's no bayis, when there's no shmita, and there's no yovel, there's no Eved Ivri. So why would he start with this? So for this, we need what it brings in Der Chaim, in the book by the Midler Rebbe, the understanding that the beginning of our parsha is talking about three worlds, from Asiyah all the way to Bria, that the Eved Ivri is the person who's in Yetzirah, in the world of formation. It's the state of the neshama when it reaches the consciousness of the world of formation, of Yetzirah. And then the Eved Kanani, about which we have a Hava Amina, that maybe this is talking about Avdo Shel Ivri, not Eved Ivri, right? And who is Avdo Shel Ivri? Who is the servant of a Jew? That's the Eved Kanani, not a Jew. So that would be an Asiyah. That's the consciousness of the world of Asiyah, of action. And then above that is the Ama Ivriya, and she is already the consciousness of the world of Bria, world of creation. Meaning that the neshama goes through stages. Right, this is one of the basic things that you learn from the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov says that whatever the mitzvah, it has to be always relevant in every place, in every time, and by every person. So how can a mitzvah like Eved Ivri and Ama Ivriya be relevant by everybody? It's talking about states of the neshama. Or states of the neshama, which is like Eved Knani, that's the lowest state. Then it becomes like an Eved Ivri, and finally it becomes like an Ama Ivriya. What's the biggest difference between Ama Ivriya and Eved Ivri and Eved Knani? It's clear, right? That these are males and that's female. Yeah.
Is it at all mentioned or noted that that it's interesting to note that she is in Bria and she's specifically a woman.
Right.
And Amma.
Right,
She can also take the word like
Ima. Right.
Bina.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Ima. You can say like it says about Ruth. She's Ima shel Malchut.
Right. But
She's the mother of Malchus.
Bria is also like
the way that Bina is the mother of Malchus.
right. So
Same
you'd give up
Ima.
the
You don't have to change it into an aleph. The word itself means her mother. That's what it means. Ima.
It is already now.
It's with a hey. Ama is
No,
with
it's
a hey.
in the end, yeah.
Okay, but even in the word ama, you right away hear the em, the two root sha'ar, as we call it, right?
But that's it is also aim hey, it's the mother to Malchus.
Right. Except here it means ama is like as a maidservant.
Right.
So it's not, the difference is whether there's the gesh in the hay or not.
Right.
If there's a mapik in the hay, it's called, then it shows shaykhus, meaning it's her mother. If there's no mapik in the hay, it's just a noun in the feminine form,
Right,
which is
but
amma.
there's 70 faces
Right.
and 70 faces.
By the way, this is a big topic in and of itself that needs a lot of birur. It's not a simple topic, but how do you say family in Hebrew?
Shpracha,
What word does that come from?
Shifra.
Okay, from shifcha. This is a very interesting thing that both the mother and the shifcha and the family and the maidservant, they're all related in Hebrew. It's like that the concept of family is somehow related to the feminine form of being a servant.
Yeah.
It's like, to say it another way, that what is it saying to the man? It's saying to the man that if you want to have a family, you have to, at some level, reveal that feminine servant side of your own. And you have to be willing to assume some of that character in yourself. Otherwise, it's not a family. Otherwise, it's just two people that are, one's taking care of the kids and the dishes and everything else, and the other one, he's like the owner here of the whole thing. And it's not a family. It's not the idea. Right? Well, how do you say family in Hebrew?
But that's also how white.
What's another word?
White supremacists also thought like that.
By the way, family is a very special word in English also.
Yes,
Where does it come from?
Family. In
What's the
English.
word
Familiar.
in Hebrew? Familia. The Rebbe has a letter that he says that he hasn't ever been able to find a reason for why in the world you say in Hebrew pamalia. Because it's really familia. That's the word in Latin. The word is familia.
Right.
What is it saying? Who's the pamalia shemal? Who's the familia above? Are there any women there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who? What's the pamalia shemal?
The Malachim.
The Malachim. And the Malachim, any of them are feminine?
No, but it says, I don't know. It does say that the hay is very connected to the Malach. The Yid is connected to the Neshama.
So in general, we say there are two types of Malachim. There's Malachim that end with Aleph Lamed, those are from the right.
Right.
And the Malachim that end with Vav Nun are from the left.
Like Matron.
Matat.
Matat.
Right. So his name ends with Vav Nun. There's a lot of it, Sandal, and all the ones that are feminine. You see, all the ones that are connected to Am Yisrael. Matat and Sandal and all these are all the feminine.
Right.
So there is some concept even in family of there being both male and female together.
It's interesting is Chanach.
But it could be that the word family itself comes from female.
Right. Chanach became the Malach. He was really, the Chanach is also Chinuch.
Right.
Chinuch is also the feminine thing.
Okay, anyway, so getting back to this. So now we have these three levels. In Derech Chaim, when he brings it the first time, he brings it in terms of davening. He says that when you're saying Korbanos, you're at the stage of an Eved Knani. When you get into Psukkah de Zimra, which is already Olam Yitzira, then you're already an Eved Ivri. And when you get to Kriyas Shema, then you're an Ama Ivriya. So now we already understand why it says, Ra'ata Shifcha Layam, מה שלא ראה יחזקאל בן בוזי בנבואתו. Shifcha Layam is like the Ama Ivriya, which is the Bina. Where's Yechezkel in the world? Who knows? It's like a
Chezkel?
Yeah.
Bina.
No, not in Bina. He's not in Bria, he's in Yitzira. It's a Meforah Zohar. Why? Because we see that he says, Ve'al hakiseh dmut kemar'eh Adam. Dmut kemar'eh Adam. That's what he says. The figure of the vision of a man. So he says like this: the man himself, the man, that's Atzilus. The vision of it is in Zah, and of a figure, the tzura is in iman. So you have here 3 stages. So he's going down from Atzilus, down to Bria, which is the figure, down to Yetzirah, where he's standing, and he's seeing the vision of it. Okay? So Yechezkel was in the world of Yetzirah, and the Amai Vriya on Yamsuf was already in a state of Bria. She was higher. That's really what it means. That's the pshat meaning. The pshat meaning what Chazal are trying to say. That she saw from a higher level than Yechezkel was able to see. Even though in the end, like we have in the Igeres HaKodesh, Yechezkel saw much more. But he saw it less clearly. He didn't see it as clearly as she did. So it's not a question of how much detail you see, rather of how much clarity you have in what you see. Sometimes that's in the Igeres HaKodesh in the Tanya, he asks us about the Arizal. The Arizal had so much detail, and Moshe Rabbeinu has so little.
Right, so it says that he saw it, but it was not without a
Right.
It couldn't be without a
Right. That he saw it from a, as it were, he saw a higher place, but he saw it from a lower. But his vista, where he was standing, was in a lower place.
But it's interesting. It's also like Kriyat Yam Suf and Kriyat Shema.
They spell different, I think.
But no, but it's interesting.
Once I say the Aleph and Ayin are always
The
related.
Kriyat Shema, Kriyat like.
Very interesting idea. It needs more thought, because there's a principle that wherever there's an Aleph, or wherever there's a Ayin in Pnimus, there's an Aleph.
Right. Yeah.
So when it says
Because the
Ayin
or
not O.
Echad and Vad.
Right. Same thing.
Ayin is Aleph.
So there it's about. The idea is the same. So we have here an idea that when there's Yisbonenus, there's an ability to achieve more than even Yechezkel can see in his prophecy.
No, but the Ches Navod switch.
Okay. So before we get into more details, I wanted to try to understand a simple concept that he has here in Siman Dalet. He quotes here from the Zohar and Mishpatim. Say in general, the Zohar and Mishpatim, Zohar itself is built out of different books, if you want, different chiburim, that Rashbi attained in different ways. Some of these he attained by his direct Gilur Eliyahu that he had, the way that he learned with Eliyahu. Some of them are older books, like what everybody almost agrees on is that the oldest part of the Zohar is the Sifra de Tzniuta, and it's Miyuchas to Yaakov Avinu. And it says that he composed those 5 chapters of the Sifra de Tzniuta. They're the progenitors of the entire Chamishachim Shei Torah. That's why it's 5 chapters. And he composed it when he was tending the flocks of Lavan, and he was doing the Birur of Am Yisrael. What's the connection? We say that there's Shishim Libo Tiot LaTorah. Israel is Yesh Shishim Libo Tiot LaTorah. It's like a Rashi tables. It's not 600,000, but in whatever cheshbon. And that's what he was doing when he was tending to the flocks. He was being mevar the 600,000 nitzotzos of the souls that would belong eventually to Am Yisrael.
And this is also why his flocks actually ended up being Rabbi Kiva and the Rashba, like not another Rashba, but different heads of Am Yisrael throughout generations.
It's not only that, there's a nigun from the Rizhiner that is Miyuchas to Yaakov Avinu. Same way.
I heard that.
That he...
also the Tzemach Tzedek and Birch's Kohanim,
Okay.
and the Beis
Right.
Mikdash had the same share.
Okay. So how did he get this? In the same way that Rashbi got it.
If you ask me, I'll say
That it was like the Gilui of Yaakov Avinu's soul in Rashbi. So when Rashbi spoke it, he was like saying what Yaakov Avinu had learned. So that's the Sifra de Tzniuta. After the Sifra de Tzniuta, in importance are the 2 Idrot. The Idrot are like the congregations. When Rashbi thought he was going to pass away, that's the Idra Baba. And then when he actually passed away, the day that he did pass away, which is called the Idra Zuta. Why is one called the great and one called the small? Because the great one, there were 10 students with Rashbi together. But then because of the tremendous light that he revealed, 3 of them died. So on the day that he passed, there were only 7 left with him. So the day that he left, when he revealed the secrets of the Keter, that was the main thing that he didn't reveal until then, so there were only 7 students who called the Idro Zuta. After that, there's a number of different important parts of the Zohar that are not from Rashbi himself, that again, they're revealed from somebody else in the generation. 2 of them, the one is mentioned in the Tanya, and it's actually what divides the Tanya into 2. In chapter 37, the Tanya starts by quoting from the Zohar in Balak, Parshas Balak. It's called the Yanuka. The Yanuka is the whole thing about Shema Roshcha lo yachsav and Chacham eina berosho and the whole thing.
It's also at the end with the Parshas.
Right, and he returns to it in chapter 50, he quotes from it again. But actually from chapter 37 and on, it's all based on the Yanuka. It's all an explanation of that part of the Zohar.
Who's the Yanuka?
The Yanuka is Rabbi Nuna Saba's son.
Nuna Saba from Basilgani.
Right, same guy.
Hanile Shtisa de Saba.
Who is the Midler Rebbe, right? They wanted to call him Himnuna. That was his original name. But then he said that the Magid came to him. The Alter Rebbe said that he wanted to call him Himnuna. That was the name that he had chosen for him. But then the Magid came to him the night before and said, you need to call him So he called him Dovko. But really, he's like Himnuna Saba. He's the same type of...
Well, he was a Gil Neshama of the...
Very, very secretive.
Very secretive.
He's an old person from the day he's born. He's Himnuna Saba.
Yeah.
So together with Rabbi Nuna Saba, so there's with the Yanuka, so there's another very important part of the Zohar called Saba de Mishpatim. That's in this week's Zohar. What's the Saba de Mishpatim about? Again, they're traveling on the road and they meet a Saba, they meet some old man. And usually when it says Saba either in the Gemara or in the Zohar, it's considered that it's from Eliyahu and Navi. And that's where the Zohar discusses the whole Indian of Gilgulim. It's really the main section of the Zohar that discusses Gilgulim. There's also...
If you ask me, I think Savant came from that.
Savant, from the Saba. Could be.
Yeah.
Anyway, so very interesting idea. Because what does Saba mean? Saba means Zakin. So savant means a wise person. Zaken is Zekana Chochma.
This is why they consider
Savant, and it means wise.
In French, it means a
Means
wise
how are
person.
you? Savant, how are you? Comment ça va?
Savant. That's C-A-V-A. Savant, S-A-V-A-N-T. Different word.
Savant.
The Tanya also, you probably not knowing where it is, but the Tanya is also lost Asam.
Right,
Like
It's about the time of the neshama.
And the Rashba is considered the Asam of the Tanaim. It was the Pimus of all Tanaim.
Tanai in general, Tanaim in general are the Eitanei Aretz. That's what they call it. What's the idea? The idea is that these are the letters that are prefixes for conjugating a verb in Hebrew into future tense. So really, everything that we do in Chassidus is we're borrowing from the future. That's it. We're like borrowing from our future self. It's like it's almost like it's the same idea as if everybody wants to have this, but they would have like a time machine that they could know what was, what would be the scores of some games, and they could bet on it today and what the score would be tomorrow. So in a certain sense, that's what the Tanya does with the neshama. It tells you what your future self is going to be like. So why wait until the future? You can do it now. Okay?
Yeah.
Right.
It's really a miracle how a person as a citizen doesn't just become a tzaddik out there.
So who said he doesn't become a tzaddik? It says
when you were born. It's a miracle that we have such a symptom.
Before you were born, they told you,
well, of course we're gonna be.
But the more important thing about this phrase is, truth is, I probably noticed it before, but I forget it every time until I hear it again. That then it says, "V'afilu kol ha'olam kulo omrim lecha tzadik ata, heyeh beinecha kerasha." It doesn't say you should be in your eyes like a rasha. It says like a rasha. So if you have time to watch the class that I gave last week on Monday, so that's one of the delusions of the world. The world tells you should feel that you're a tzaddik. The Tanya says the only way you can fight that delusion is with the opposite delusion. But it's a delusion. Don't buy into it. The opposite delusion is you're a rasha, but it's a delusion. It's kerasha. You're not really a rasha. It's just the only way that you can fight the battle against the ego wanting to take over and you wanted to become everything is by telling yourself all the time, I'm like a Russia. But you're not a Russia at all. You're a tzaddik. It's just a delusion of the world that it wants you to take that in the wrong way. It wants you to over-aggrandize your ego because you're a tzaddik. But really, Kol Yisrael tzaddikim. Ba'amech kulam tzaddikim. There's no such thing as a Jew who's not a tzaddik. In fact, what is a tzaddik according to the Tanya? It's very simple. It's just a person who knows who he is. That's what he does in the first chapter. He tells you it's not about cheshbon mitzvot, cheshbon avirut.
I read the story with the guy who went by the Rebbe and said, I don't understand, Rebbe, how can Russia be Mother Mrs. Grimmett?
How could it be that somebody was full of be called a Russia? That was from that was the Satmar Rebbe.
Yeah, I'd rather not do that.
No, it's not. It's important to know that there's differences in outlook.
Yeah.
Not to say Chaz v'Shalom did something wrong, but it's a different outlook. It's a different way. Anyway, so in the Sabbath Mishpatim, there's a very important thing that's quoted a lot. And the first time I came across it must have been 12 years old. And I was reading a book by, here's a person whose name I don't want to say, but you'll figure it out by yourselves. And he brought this Sabbath Mishpatim. And it says there, what he says here, that when a person is born, he receives the level of nefesh. Zachayatir, if he rectifies himself enough, Yavin lerucha, he's given the level of ruach, the next level up. Zachayatir Yavin lenishmata, then he gets neshama. In Chassidus we say it continues on. That if you continue, all in all, there's 5 levels, all the way up to Yechida, and then, even in the Arizal, he already says that really it's all 25 levels. Why? Because it's 5 times 5, there is
interesting what you're saying.
But even more than that, he says it's 125 levels.
Neshama or not?
Yeah.
You just said it's 5 times 5.
Right.
It's 5 times 5, but then the Arizal says it's 5 times 5 times 5. It's 125 levels.
And that's it? Or should it keep on going?
So what's the idea? So by the way, what happens if you do multiply it one more time, times 5? I think it's 625. 625 is Adam b'milui. And if you add the
Aleph,
Dalet, Mem, you write it out completely, it's 625. It's like to say that there is a level, there is another...
1 plus 4 is 5. 5 is...
Saying the fact that another times 5 would equal Adam shows that it goes to, you got to think that
there is such a thing.
But it's not said anywhere in the Rizal doesn't speak about it.
The Rizal doesn't speak about it openly, but later in Chassidus it is
Adam is
spoken
ma.
about.
Adam is 45. That's
Okay, so let's get back to the idea. So how is this understood? How do you understand something like this? So by the world, especially this book that I read when I was 12, so what did he say? He said that it's all about empowering you. That every time that you go up a level, it's like a video game. So every time you go up a level, you become more powerful.
You heard it first.
Okay? That's how they picture it. What's the chiddush here? It's not a chiddush. This is the pshat. The other way is like it's so off. Once you hear the pshat, you understand how off everything else is. What does he say here? That the higher up you go, the more devoted a servant of Hashem you become. What do you mean you're empowered? Empowered to do what? So they paint it like you become empowered to succeed, to be whatever you want to be in the world. But here it's very clear that as you go up, it's like in davening, you're coming closer and closer to serving Hashem in His own chamber. That's what it means to become empowered in Yiddishkeit. That the higher I go, it's how much closer can I become to Hashem? How much more can I be given the tasks that are closer to Him, that He depends on more, as it were. Okay?
No, we said together, I think that there's a deal that it says if you haven't given the next level. It's not an obey. You don't.
Right.
It's not I become a ruach.
Right.
I'm zocher, but they give it to me.
Right.
So the whole thing is.
Right. So sometimes they even say lama lecha. Like sometimes you have to say to a person, "You sure you want to go up a level?" it's not easier when you go up level. And if you look at it as I am aggrandizing myself, empowering myself to be, so of course everybody wants to go up, because you get better tools and you can, it's like a video game. But if you understand that it means that it's giving you more responsibility and it's more demanding, less hours to sleep, more hours to work, all these things. So you have to think twice. You really want to go up another level. But that's what he's saying here, that the Ama Ivri...
I have to leave, I'm sorry. I'm really enjoying it though, so I just want to know I want to finish there. I'm really sorry. It was very good saying it. It was good saying it. Beautiful stuff.
So, how do we understand this in terms of the Eved Kanani, Eved Ivri, and Ama Ivriya? So, we began with this. What's the biggest difference? That she's female and they're male. So what's the most that they can do? What's the most that an Eved Kanani can do? What's the most that he can do in the world? They can all labor, but what's his biggest thing that he can do? That he can have, you give him a Shifcha Kanani, you give him a Goyish, a servant. And it's not even marriage. They just have offspring, and the offspring also belongs to the master.
That's the most benefit, the greatest benefit that you
that's the greatest benefit that you can give, and that's tikkun olam for him. Really, that's the tikkun olam. Unless he decides to become a Jew. So if he decides to become a Jew, it's a whole different game.
What's interesting though, because when he becomes a Jew, he's also becoming one with the feminine, spiritual side of the Shem.
Ken, why do you say that?
Because that's the spiritual.
Because the Gerim, they start off from Tachat Kanfei Ashkinah.
Exactly.
Right. So they're starting in Malchus. That's
Regardless,
exactly.
they both go to the...
Yeah. In general, Gerim, that's what they're connected to. They're connected to Malchus. We see that all the Gerim, all the big Gerim in Am Yisrael, in some way they're connected to Malchus. But getting back to it, what about the Eved Ivri? What's his greatest benefit that he can do? He can do a lot more.
mitzvahs.
He can do mitzvahs. He still has
So
the
could
mitzvahs that
Eved
he's
Kanani could also
obligated
do.
to. What?
Eved Kanani also does mitzvahs.
Only a couple.
No. If he does a mitzvah beyond meaning if he does a mitzvah and his master allows him to do a mitzvah, he becomes a Jew.
No, but in terms of
you can be mitzaref him to Zimun, for instance, or something like that.
he's mitzvahs
The minimum. But the moment he does something more,
He doesn't touch your wine.
well, you can also touch your wine. I'm talking about what benefit does he give. The Eved Ivri has a lot of mitzvahs that he
It's
does.
good wine.
But the Ama Ivriya, she's even higher than that. Because what can she do? What's the highest state that the Ama Ivriya can attain? That she marries, usually, really it should be the Adon himself, the master himself, or at least his son. But this was really a way, when somebody, talk about chesed, the biggest form of chesed is you take a girl whose family has to sell her into working, and into bondage in the sense of having to work for somebody. She doesn't get paid.
And she's a regular wife.
And you take her out of that. First of all, you accept her into your home, and you take her as a maidservant.
But even the maidservants, they get treated better. They get treated better.
But more than that, in the end, it's to marry her.
Right.
Really, that's the goal of the master. He takes her either for himself or for his children. And that's the highest uplifting thing that you can do for a person who's coming from the lowest place in Am Yisrael.
The Shem Yichud Kutcher B'Cheshinta is usually
that. Yeah. So she's not just, she always is Jewish, and she never leaves any of her status behind. She's never puttered from anything. But more than that, the whole point is Yahda, Yehud. Yehud means the same thing as Kiddushin in a free woman. It's a Yehud. Yehud means Mekadesher. So what does this mean in us? That if I attain the level of Ama Ivriya, if my neshama goes up to that level, then really the whole point of the exercise was for my neshama to wed with Hashem. Hashem here is the master. And so then I can have offspring like the master. Okay? That's the whole idea. That is here not just to have like the Eved Kanani or the Shifcha Kanani, they're both in the world of Asiyah, which is just to populate the world. It's a mitzvah in and of itself. It's called לשבת יצרה, לא לתוהו ברא, לשבת יצרה. The world's not supposed to be left uncivilized. It has to be filled with people. But when I get to the level of Ivriya in the world of Beriah, of creation, there I'm already wedding to Hashem at the level that my offspring will be like Hashem. And that's the highest level that I can attain.
Actually, also that happened to the Shach's daughter. A whole story with her, but in the end of the story, Shach's daughter ends up being redeemed from pays the ransom, and then she's brought in as a maidservant, and she eventually marries her master.
Right. You can say that all the stories that Reb Nachman told about Bat HaMelech Shenishbeta. What does it mean that Shenishbeta? She was taken into captivity. It's talking about a Ma'ivriya. Really, what is he talking? Who's the Bat HaMelech that you're supposed to seek? And they all go out. In all the Reb Nachman stories, somebody's going after the Bat HaMelech. That's your neshama. Really, that's what you're supposed to free. And the moment that you free her, then you get to marry her. What do you get to marry her? Hashem marries her, and you become Hashem's equal, as it were. So, now, there's another thing to understand in terms of the levels of going up. So for this, I want to quote to you from Rabbi Isaac of Homel. It's a little bit difficult, but the Hebrew is, it's Hasidic Hebrew. You should be okay to understand it. And what he's talking about is he's giving examples of levels of bittul. To understand, because really what's going on here, that there are levels of bittul here that we're going through. The Eved Knani has at least bittul. Ki avda ve'efkira nichali. The Rebbe says here, you can't vanquish the animal soul that doesn't want to receive Hashem's yoke all at once. You have to do it little by little. So how do you do it little by little? So you go from one level of bittul to the next. So usually in Chabad we talk about two levels. Bitul hayesh, bitul b'mtziut. But Rav Isaac will now say that there's actually three levels. And then we'll analyze it and we'll see that there's really four levels here. There's four levels and they correspond perfectly to these levels of the Eved Knani, the Eved Ivri, the Ama Ivriya, and finally to Hashem. It's mamish in Natilus, it's like Hashem already. So when you become one with Hashem. Okay, so let's read what he says. He says V'inyan kayadua, the Indian is it's known, sheyesh bitul hayesh bitul ba'etzem. Okay, so I forget, that was the third one that he now mentions. Bitul ba'etzem. There's bitul b'etzius and bitul hayesh, and now he says also bitul ba'etzem. What is bitul hayesh? Bitul hayesh is the nullification of my feeling of being. Ke'eved ha'oved b'chol avodah b'sadeh u'v'bayit ke'mitzvat adonav alav. It's like a servant who's working in all the manners of work in the field and in the house, as his master commands him. She'arei hu omed b'chol yeshuto. Even when he's working, he still has all of his issues. His whole being is still there. Except what? But his bittul is strong enough to say, at this moment my master said to do so and so. I'm plowing the field, so I plow the field. That's what I'm doing. What happens the moment that I'm done? I go back to my issues. That's what it means, avda be'efkira nichali. That really, the hefker here is hefker from the Adon. It's not hefker, again, also the Gemara says, it's also hefker in the sense that they're promiscuous, the avadim knaniyim. But that's not the deeper pshat. The deeper pshat is, the hefkera, he's not interested. If the Adon doesn't give him something to do, he doesn't know what to do. So he goes back to his issues. He goes back to tending to himself. But מה שאין כן העומד לפני המלך, שכל הרגשותיו בטלים, ואינו מרגיש רק אימת המלך. But there's a different example of bittul, of a person standing in front of a king, And there he says all his emotions, meaning all his senses about reality are batel, they're nullified, and all he can feel, all he can sense is his fear of the king. Ulechol asher yitzavenu yelech, and everywhere that the king will send him, he will go. V'yaseh b'koach imat malchut v'lo b'koach atzmo. So here's the thing: that what he'll accomplish in merit of his fear of the king, not as a result of his own prowess, of his own strength. He's going to adapt the energy that his fear of the king is giving him. Okay? That he connects with the king through his fear, and now he's able to do something in the name of the king. So let's understand what the difference is. That the first level, all he feels, he still feels himself, except that his master said, go do something else. He uses his strength to go do something else, the servant. At the second level, the servant of a king, he doesn't feel his own power anymore. That's what's nullified. And the only thing that he feels is the power that the king is giving him. So this is when I stand before Hashem, Be'imah, really what is that supposed to do? It's supposed to say that you have much, when I say, you can look at it in two ways. You can say on the one hand, I'm nullifying my powers. So what's left for me? It says, no, on the contrary, now you've become empowered by the energy of the king, which is something entirely bigger than what you can do. And the idea here is to put my abilities aside, and I'm now empowered by what the king can achieve, which is a whole different level of achievement. It's many things that I can't even dream of. The king can send me to some, like, but the Rebbe was very clear. Like, he suddenly sends you to Iceland. What for? Why would I, in my right mind, go to Iceland? There's nothing to do with it. All anti-Semites. What would I do then? But he sees something. He says, for me, it's a shlichus. For me, there's something to do. And so you go and you do something that's not in your power at all. That you would never have even dreamt of going there. And this is a different level of bittul. Why? Because you're not working with your own energy anymore. And notice here that this is Yetzirah, because how does he describe it? He describes it as emotions. Beino margish. It's all halgashot. At the very least it's that. But it's all in the world of Yetzirah. And he loses his ability to be free. Meaning that this is annulment in my very essence. Because the very power of my being is gone. The essence of my being is gone. It's completely nullified. The only thing that's working through me, it's like vicariously the king is operating through me. He's acting through me. Then says, so you think, well, it could be higher than that. That's called bitul be'etzem. He says no. Even that is something only considered to be the bitul of a person's being. And the real purpose, the real end of bitul be'etzem, of the essence, what does that mean? That now we're going not to go into emotions, but into consciousness already. Consciousness is already the world of Bria. So now, which consciousness are we going to look at? That the servant is going to see himself the way the king sees him. Okay? Until now, in the Vavke, in the Yetzirah, and the Asiya, and Bitul Yensha and Bitul Be'etzem described until now, we were only interested in how the servant feels. But now we begin to be interested in the Yudke, in the Nistarot, what's hidden. What's hidden? It's how the king sees the servant, how Hashem sees me. So how does he see me? שהמלך עצמו אינו מרגיש ישות העבד למציאות רק לשימוש בעשיית מצוותיו. Because the king, he doesn't even see that I have a being. As far as he's concerned, I'm just an extension of His will. I'm just an extension of His being. Okay? When looking at it from Hashem's point of view, Hashem's consciousness, that's what's called Yichud Eilah. Yichud Eilah, this is Ayin, and where Hashem is standing, that's the Ish. So in the king, it's the same way. For him, his reality, the king's reality, that's what is really being. That's what really exists. And the whole reality of the servant is just an extension of his reality. They have no being of their own at all. So what does he see in the servant? He only sees it as a direct extension, and the only possible outcome is that the servant do whatever the king said. So this would already be an Ama Ivriya. An Ama Ivriya, in a state of Ama, we would say that she has no feeling of her own, no existence of her own, and she's willing to see the world from the point of view of her master. That's how the neshama reaches the third level. So where's the fourth level? Here. So let's see. So he says, נמצא שאין ישות כלום, וכל עצמות ישותו, שאין ישותו כלום, וכל עצמות ישותו בטל בעיני המלך, ואין נקרא דבר איש כלל. At the third level, there is nothing left. I'm only an extension of the king. That's the Ama Ivriya level of the soul. V'yesh eved, so now this is the fourth one. He doesn't say it's the fourth one, because in a certain sense, Atzilus, he can't say anything. He can't say that it's a new one. It's a maskil yevin, די למבין. ויש עבד שמכיר גדולת המלך כל כך, עד שגם הוא מרגיש את עצמו כאין הרגשת המלך אותו, זה נקרא ביטול בעצם ודאי. His fourth level, he says, how is it different than the third? At the third level, what I'm left with is that there's no I. There's absolutely no I. I'm just an extension of the king. Now that's very powerful. That's called Evid Melech Melech. That's called that the servant of a king is the king himself. Woe to the person who insults the servant of the king, because the king, it's like insulting him. You can't insult the servant. It's like insulting the king. But what does that mean? It means that the servant is nothing at all. But he says, but there's a very wise servant. He says he has to be very wise to get this. That he realizes and he takes upon himself to see the world, to see himself the way the king sees it. Meaning he's seeing himself again. He comes back in Atzilus, in emanation, there's actually a level where I become so one with Hashem that I begin to see myself the way Hashem sees me. Think about it. It's like these two mirrors, one in front of the other. In the beginning, I only saw what the king saw. What did the king see? That I don't exist. That's all I saw. I saw that I don't exist. I'm just an extension. But at the second level, I begin to see what's in the king's mind. When the king looks, what does he see? He sees something that is an extension of him. There is something there.
But he's still seeing. How is he something that's, it's like a paradox?
Right. There's already a paradox here. Then I'm, on the one hand, the king, when he sees me, there's nothing here. It's just an extension. But I'm still aware. And I can't, that's the idea that there's no real bittul in the end. There's no complete absolute bittul. There's no such thing. So what does complete absolute bittul really mean? It means to see the world like Moshe Rabbeinu, Tmunat Hashem Yabit. He sees the world the way Hashem sees it. But he sees it. Okay? But Moshe Rabbeinu sees it. That's the Eved Neman. That's the real bittul be'etzem vadai. He says, why vadai? Vadai means that there's some certainty to it. At the Bria level, it's called Efshariyut HaMetziut. That reality is possible. How would it be possible? If the servant goes and does what the king said, so he has some reality. What's his reality now? That he's an extension of the king. But is that really all there is? We know about ourselves. If I don't do something that Hashem told me to do I stop existing at that moment? I don't. So how is it that I still exist? If my only reality is to be an extension of Hashem, so how could it be that I can do the opposite? So the whole idea, and that's the paradox, is that Hashem, when He looks at me, He sees something whose pnimius, whose essence is completely batal to Him. But He sees something. If I can connect with that He sees something, I'll say that a little bit stronger, if I can connect with that He sees something, then there's already some mitzius to this whole story. It's not just of shariyut and mitziut. It's hayesh amiti. It's real yeshut. That's the real yeshut that you have. Is to see things the way Hashem sees them. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu saw. Let's say it in another way. The difference.
I don't know, but what's the difference between Amma Ivriya and the highest level? Because Amma Ivriya is seeing everything the way that Hashem sees it.
No, seeing that I'm completely null and I'm only an extension of my master. That's how I view myself.
That's Bittul Betzim.
That's Bittul Betzim. Bittul Betzim Vadai says the fourth level is that when I see it, it's like I'm looking out of His eyes. I'm looking out of Hashem's eyes. If you want a strange example of it, there was a movie called Being John Malkovich. It's a very strange movie. But the idea, the premise behind it was incredible. It's like, what would it feel like if we could go behind somebody's eyes? Like, so they chose like John Malkovich because I don't know why. Because he's a movie star or whatever. It was a play on it. But it's like I begin to look at the world through His eyes. Do I exist then or do I not? So in that movie, they couldn't make it so that they would exist, right? They couldn't have that I would be looking out of my eyes and still see me, interacting with me. Or let's say you would look out of my eyes and I would still interact with you. That they couldn't do. Because you're here now, your consciousness is here now. But that's the Chiddush of Hashem. That's the same. That's why He's a creator. It's much more than just being another consciousness. Because He created me. What does it mean He created me? That you could go into Hashem's eyes and see yourself. That's the big Chiddush. That just as much as I exist right now, I would continue to exist even if I would go look at it from Hashem's eyes. I would say, why? Because He created the world. That's what it means that He created the world. That's also what it means that He's mechadish the world in every moment. That at every moment, He still makes me exist. So I could interact with myself. That's what He means here, that this would be, this is already a mind twister. It's already thinking, what does it mean? But it means that I have real reality. It's not just a figment of my imagination, really just an extension, there's nothing there. No, Hashem at every moment wants me to exist. That's the highest level of bittul, to see things that way. So that's already above Amayivriya. That would be like uniting with Hashem's consciousness. That's what it says about Moshe Rabbeinu. Tmunat Hashem Yabit. What does it mean that He sees Hashem's picture? He sees Hashem's picture, including Himself. He sees what Hashem sees, including Himself, entirely. Okay. So these are levels of bittul in the nefesh. And actually, when we're davening, the purpose is to reach these levels. And what does Moshe Rabbeinu say in the end? V'natati eseb b'sadcha livimdecha. Who's going to give the eseb? I am. What level? When do we say that? When do we say that? Krishma. Krishma, we said, is only Amayivriya. The level of Amayivriya, Moshe is like just an extension of Hashem. Because it's just an extension of Hashem. So you can say, I will give your animals sustenance to eat. He's only at the level of that He's nothing but an extension of Hashem. But in Atzilus, in the Amida, what do we go? Then we go back to being Baruch Atah Hashem. Here you are. I return to being who I am. I return to being a person. Because if you think about it, it's like by nature we say that it's a Yerida. Because in Kriyas Shema you had all this isbonenus, you had all this meditation, and you're meditating on there's only Hashem, so you cover your eyes, there's only Hashem. So how did it happen when I came to Amida, and suddenly I came back into the world? That I'm saying, Baruch Atah Hashem. I say, it's for me. Because in Atzilus, I already go back to there being a world again. Why? Because there's no stira. That in Hashem's point of view, I do exist in the end. As something that he wants to exist. Listen, and all this, he says, this is what we need to learn from the first laws that we receive after Matan Torah. It's not to be an Eved Hashem, not to become an Eved Hashem. There are levels in it. You start with Eved Knani, and you go up to Eved Ivri, and eventually you become an Amai Ivri, to the point where you marry Hashem, as it were. And then you become one with him to the point where it goes back to being that there's a world. And then he goes in Siman Zayin, he goes back to explaining all this within the davening. Okay. So let's just read it a little bit, from inside, something. How much time do we have? Anything?
Because it's going to be in the next 5-10 minutes.
So the whole moving up in levels from Eved Ivri from Eved Knani to Eved Ivri to Amai Briya. It exists in each of us every day. והעניין מבחינת Eved Knani כאשר יש לנו מבחינת התלבשות בענייני העולם בכדי לברר אותם. כמו שכתוב ועשית כל מלאכתך. So whenever we're working with the material aspect of this world, what are we there? We're like an Eved Knani. Why an Eved Knani? Because we give room to our being something, and we said we're working with in the material world, we have to work with your strength, with what you have. בכדי להופכו לקדושה. שמצד התלבשות זו בענייני העולם, על ידי הבירור אפשר שידבק במדבר עניין בלתי רצוי ודבר מדבר כדאית בתניא. But still there's a danger here. Because I'm working with myself, so there's also a danger that something from the material, from the, call it the distance the material world has from Hashem will cling to me as I'm working in the field. Because again, I'm working with my own prowess. If I was working with what the king gave me, to the king nothing clings. And there's no such thing. It doesn't make any sense. But here, how is Tumah even possible? Because I'm working with myself. אמנם ירידה זו היא לצורך עלייה, ולכן היא לרגע בלבד, מיד אחר זו התחלת העלייה, ויקרא מזו, הנה על ידי הירידה נסע עלייה ותבוס. הדרך המובאה בתניא בנוגע לעניין מבלבל את האדם בתפילתו, שמהבלבול עצמו צריך להתעורר להתפלל יותר בכוונה ומתקנים. So what do we see? That from these negative things that connect to us while we're in the world, like that I know that it's called being John Malkovich. So right away you have to do an aliyah. What's the aliyah? So he says here, the aliyah is שמהבלבול עצמו צריך להתעורר, להתפלל יותר בכוונה מעומקא דליבה. I have to be awakened to a higher level of service. What's the level of service? הוא כשהתבונן שמכיוון שהקדוש ברוך הוא המחיה את העניין ומבלבלו, הנה בוודאי שזה שיראו לו מלמעלה בלבול זה, אבל בלבול נמצא בתוך הדלת אמות שלו, ועד שגם מבלבלו בתפילתו. הוא לא מפני שהוא עניין בפני עצמו חס וחלילה. It's not that the בלבול really is something separate. רק בידי שאדם על ידי עבודתו יעשה מהבלבול מטעמים לשון רבים. So the whole point is to raise it. And here he's not going the way that the Tanya explained it. Right? The Tanya explains that if there's something coming to be mabalbel you, then what should we do? You should ignore it. Why do you say you should ignore it? And not like he says here, raise it. Because there he's saying it's coming from out of you. But it's something that originates in your own problems. But here he's saying that the problem it's really from the outside, from the fact that I went out and did the king's work, so stuff clinged to me. So that stuff, it didn't come for nothing, it came for a reason. That's the original teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. And what I need to do is raise it, elevate it. תחילה על ידי העבודה שמבחינת התקפיה, עד שגם מבחינת התתחה. כמובן בתניא. So I have to bring it up first for its kafia, not letting it affect me. That's what it says in the Tanya already. Until I can actually transform it into something that can be used in a shir, something I can use, do something with, and do something holy with. ועל דרך זהו בעניין הנ"ל שמהירידה גופה צריך להתעורר ביתר שאת לעבוד עבודתו בשנת עבד כנעני, עבד עברי ואמה עברייה, עד שיגיע להיות לו או לבנו יעדנה. ועד ויצא חינם אין כסף, and so in all these levels of bringing it up, slowly I elevate until the place of the Yatzah Chinam in Kasef. Yatzah Chinam in Kasef is to be free. That's already to be like a free woman who's married to a Shem. There's no more subservience. That's the level that he described here, that we're real mitzvahs. Real mitzvahs that Hashem is connected to. Why? Because Hashem wants you to exist. So maybe we'll finish here. Just a little bit more afterwards. But if we're doing it in a cursory manner, so this will have to suffice.
Go ahead.